Thank you very much, Mr. President, Madam Rajavi. This morning, here in the Palais des Nations, the Deputy Foreign Minister of Iran, Mr. Mohammad Mehdi Akhundzadeh, made a speech in which he said Iran's commitment to the protection and promotion of human rights is steadfast. Tell that to these people hanging from cranes and public executions. Tell it to the people who have suffered lapidation, rape, amputations, floggings, torture. Mr. Akhundzadeh, the Deputy Foreign Minister from Iran, knows Geneva well. He was sent here by the mullahs in 1990 as part of a team who assassinated Dr. Kazem Rajavi, and the police have his name on records here. They want to interrogate him about that offence, and he returns here disgracefully today, rewarded for his service to the mullahs by being given a ministerial office and coming to Geneva to lecture us about human rights. This is an outrage. And he went on to say it is indeed our ultimate guideline in Iran to build a democratic, modern society. Well, let me tell you something about this Disneyland fantasy. It is not democratic. The fraudulent election of Ahmadinejad proved that beyond doubt. It is not modern. It's medieval in its barbarity. And the society is broken, oppressed and abused. And the only way the Iranian people will ever taste freedom again is if we get Mrs. Rajavi and the PMOI into power there and get rid of the current regime. Now, I want to say that the most recent clear expression of Iran's belief in human rights was demonstrated in the film we have just seen, in that vicious assault that took place on the 9th of February. When over 45 107mm rockets were carefully targeted, landing, as you saw from the film, in a densely populated area of Camp Liberty, where information had clearly been given from the inside authorities to show which was the best target to attack in the middle of the night, when people were sleeping, defenseless, unarmed civilians, asleep in flimsy trailers, densely packed together, with no protection at all, the T-walls removed before they were allowed to enter Camp Liberty. The usual kind of haphazard terrorist attack, which is a daily occurrence, sadly, inside Iraq. This was a professionally targeted military exercise, and we have the best possible intelligence to prove that. Even Iraqi military experts who went to Camp Liberty following the attack on the morning of the 9th of February, examining the way the shells had landed, the rockets had landed, concluded that they must have been fired from no further than 3.5 kilometres away. In other words, well within the confines of the highly intensely guarded military zone that surrounds the whole of Baghdad Airport and Camp Liberty. There is no question that this attack, ordered by the mullahs in Tehran, was coordinated by the Iraqi authorities from the highest possible office of Nouri al-Maliki himself. And there is no question at all that we have warned, as Mrs. Rajavi said in her speech repeatedly, that this was going to happen. This killing ground was prepared for this purpose. Now, we know from further intelligence that there were two teams involving Iranians and Iraqis that were sent to carry out this vicious assault. The idea was the first barrage of rockets would be fired, and 1 hour later, when there was many people rushing around trying to help the dying and injured, the second barrage of 50 rockets would be fired, causing maximum carnage. And inadvertently, that second team was arrested by some Iraqi police forces who were not in the loop, who hadn't been brought into the confidence of the attack. They were very quickly released and allowed to go back to Iran after the intervention of the Prime Minister's office. And that's why we know that this was a well-planned assassination. And we've now even seen the man who has taken responsibility for this attack, who lives in Najaf and claims to be the leader of the Mukhtar Battalion, which is a well-known part of the Hezbollah in Iraq under the jurisdiction directly of the Iranian Quds Force. Now, we were promised, when Martin Kubler came to see me in my office in Brussels and to see other senior members of the European Parliament, he brought with him a large dossier of photographs to show us what a wonderful concept this Camp Liberty would be, that it was humanitarian, it was comfortable, they would be provided with complete security, albeit it was rather small, but they would only be there for a few weeks, and then they would be taken off to places of safety. Twice I came here to Geneva to speak to Antonio Guterres, and he told me that the concept was to have, in his words, a revolving door where several hundred people would be brought from Camp Ashraf to Camp Liberty, interviewed by UNHCR, registered as refugees, and immediately taken to countries of safety. And I went to Paris and persuaded Mrs. Rajavi to tell the people of Ashraf that this was their only chance of getting out of Iraq. They had to move to Camp Liberty. The UNHCR interviews could not be undertaken at Ashraf. It was a red line for Maliki and the Iraqi government. And against her better judgment, Mrs. Rajavi finally gave in to my insistence and spoke to the people in Ashraf and persuaded them to move, based on the guarantees we had had from Martin Kubler, which now have proved to be completely false. I was deceived. The dossier of photographs had been doctored. We have that on first-hand evidence from Tahar Boumedra, who worked for the UN in Baghdad and resigned in disgust at being ordered to doctor these photographs. This is the behaviour of the United Nations in Iraq. I was deceived, my colleagues were deceived, and in turn we deceived the people of Ashraf, forcing them to make themselves vulnerable targets of assassination and murder. And that is exactly what has happened now, and I feel guilty for that. And what do we see as a result? I got a very long letter yesterday from the deputy of Mr. Kobler, Mr. Buston, telling me that I must persuade all my colleagues, and he incidentally had copied this letter to about 20 of my senior colleagues in the European Parliament, that we must all tell Mrs. Rajavi to intervene now and persuade these people to continue to allow UNHCR to go on with the interviewing process and the registration process and to cooperate with them. Business as usual, as if no attack had taken place, as if 7 people had not been brutally killed, 10 people dismembered, 90 people critically injured, as if none of this had happened, despite all of our warnings. Let's return to business as normal. Please don't criticise my great friends in the Iraqi government. That would never do. And I can tell you, Mrs. Rajavi, that I advise today these people who have been deceived, and deceived by me in the past, My advice to them today is stop cooperating with Martin Kobler. Stop cooperating with any further interviews with UNHCR. Do not allow cherry picking so that 10, 20 or 30 people can be plucked out and taken to some country of safety, leaving those who remain behind even more vulnerable. Tell them there is no more business as usual. We must get these people out of Camp Liberty, where they're in imminent danger of annihilation, all 3,000 of them, and we must get them immediately to a place of safety. If that means temporarily getting them back to Ashraf, where because of its size and because of the concrete bunkers and buildings they will be more safe, while we find a way of getting all 3,100 of them out of Iraq, 3 weeks after the vicious assault that killed these people, not a single helmet or armoured vest has been allowed into Camp Liberty. They have asked permission to buy shovels so that they can dig bunkers in which they could hide if there's another missile attack. They have been refused permission even to buy shovels. No T-walls have been brought into the camp. And we are sitting here in the 22nd Human Rights Council of the United Nations in the Palais des Nations here in Geneva, sitting here, leaving these people, abandoning them to their fate. They have suffered 3 massacres. They have suffered harassment, abuse. They've been robbed, kidnapped, tortured, murdered, denied medical assistance. The graves of their loved ones have been desecrated in Ashraf. And we sit here in the middle of this human rights conference, abandoning them to their fate on the basis of advice from Martin Kobler. Well, I can tell you that is hypocrisy. And Mrs. Rajavi, I am not a hypocrite. Thank you.